Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kerry Moles. I'm the Executive Director of CASA-NYC. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And welcome to our Pride panel. This is our first panel of our Youth Leadership Council, which is taking place in a virtual format. So we're really excited to see an incredible turnout tonight. And I'm just going to start by telling you a little bit about CASA-NYC. I think most of you are familiar with CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates of New York City, and we are a volunteer-based organization. We are assigned by family court judges to the cases of children and youth in foster care when judges have concerns that those kids need some extra support, some extra attention, that the parents might need some support with facilitating reunification, or when young people who are aging out of the foster care system are in need of some additional support to help them plan and transition to living on their own. In CASA-NYC, we serve about 1,300 children and youth each year throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. And we have a small staff of 17, and we're really excited to be here tonight. One of our newer initiatives at CASA-NYC is our Youth Leadership Council. And this is a group of young people currently or formerly in foster care, at the moment all formerly, who serve on our Youth Leadership Council. And the goal of the YLC, as we call it, is we have a few goals. One is to help prepare our volunteer advocates to serve as advocates and help train them on how to be the best advocates they can, how to engage young people, how to really understand what's going on in the system, what are the barriers for young people in the system. And they also meet regularly, do panel presentations and trainings for other professionals in the child welfare system. They speak with child welfare advocates and with attorneys and with judges, really advocating to try to make the system better, help us who are working in the system figure out how to do the best we can to support young people in the foster care system. So this is the first time. The Youth Leadership Council has been in existence for about 2 years now. This is the first time we're doing a virtual panel, and you will meet 2 of our Youth Leadership Council members who are on this panel tonight. And we're going to move on to introductions in a minute. But first, I would like to introduce Rosie Williams, who is going to be my co-moderator this evening. Haas, as we call him, is the newest member of our team at CASA-NYC. He's our coordinator of youth services, and I'm really excited to welcome him, and I'm going to turn it over to Haas.
Hello, everybody. My name's Haas, or as you heard, Rosie Williams. Call me Haas. Pronouns he, him, his. And I just want to double back on Elizabeth's housekeeping and let you all know that we'll keep you all muted and off video to prevent any interruptions and so that you can hear our panelists loud and clear. But I also want to invite you to comment and question in the chat. However, as there's a large turnout and we only have a few panelists and we're going to be doubling back for that Q&A, we've sectioned off at least a half hour at the end of this for your Q&A. Please be specific as you type your comment or your question, which panelist it's for. And with that being said, I will respond to these after the panel, just to be clear again. Your questions and comments will be in the chat, and then at the end, we'll get to those. We're going to kick off with some questions prepared by our YLC, as well as myself. But I want to introduce you to our panelists who are present. And I want to start off by introducing you to Stephen Gordon, who is the Director of LGBTQ Equity and Strategy at ACS's New York City's Administration for Children's Services, also known as NYC ACS. Stephen.
Hey everyone, happy Pride, happy belated Juneteenth. I'm so honored to be here with this stunning panel of people. My name is Stephen Gordon, he, him pronouns please. As I said, I'm the Director of LGBTQ Equity Strategies for ACS. And just so folks are aware, the Office of Equity Strategies is a new office that ACS created about about a year ago that it became into fruition. And what our main objective is to look at all the policies, practices, and trainings across ACS divisions and make sure that they are equitable in their language and in their practice as relates to race, as it relates to gender, as it relates to young people who are TGMB, as it relates to young people who identify as LGBTQ. We're such a lucky office to be able to do this work, especially right now in this history of what's happening. ACS is well aware of the historical roots of its institution, that a lot of it is rooted in racism, a lot of it's rooted in white supremacy. And ACS is really committed to undoing that in such a way that we can actually begin to really kind of like peel back the layers of what equity really means. Given what's happening in America right now, our commissioner is really committed to doing this equity work in a real meaningful way that goes beyond just a rubber stamp. And so they bring in people like me who aren't from government. I spent 15 years as a youth advocate working with systems-involved LGBTQ young people, and nothing excites me more or keeps me going more than the resiliency and the power of youth. And so I'm just so happy to be here and to shine a light on the young people. And I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Stephen. I want to lead us and welcome us to our next panelist, who will lead off with pretty much the same introduction. They're going to give you a name, their gender-specific pronouns, their agency affiliation, and their role in that agency. And our next panelist is Brieanna Hayes, who is CASA-NYC Youth Leadership Council member and a former foster youth. Bree?
Hi, again, my name is Brieanna Hayes. I usually say anything respectful, so he, she, they, him, whatever comes to your mind, anything respectful. My role in the YLC and CASA in New York City is basically creating with kids, finding creative ways to enlighten them and to challenge them to be better, to basically fight for what it is they want, and helping them do that by showing them I am living proof of that situation. Also educating caseworkers, anybody who's going to work in the child welfare system, about what it's like to be a youth in the system and what it might be like for kids that are going through the system now. Anything in that sort, that's me. Pretty much, yeah.
Gratitude, Bree, and welcome. And I want to introduce you guys to our next panelist, Mr. Jarel Melendez, Youth Advocate Coordinator at Lawyers for Children. Take it away, Jarel.
Hi, everyone. Happy Pride. Happy belated Juneteenth. I'm Jarel Melendez. Gender pronouns are he, him, but I like what Brieanna said, so I'm going to still let anything respectfully these days I'll take. So I work at Lawyers for Children. We're a non-for-profit law firm that's advocacy-based. We have clients anywhere from babies all the way up until the age of them discharging from foster care, and sometime with the exception of policy to CS 21 plus, they're in care after the age of 21. Although court is over, we're still able to provide legal services and support for them. My role at Lawyers for Children, I bring the first, myself and another youth advocate, shout out to Chelsea, I don't know if she joined tonight or not, we bring the firsthand experience. So we have lived experience, we're incredible messengers. So I like to say that my role is really providing firsthand to our young people that's transitioning out of foster care that they can make it, you know. So thank you guys for having me, thank you for doing this.
Gratitude, Jarel. And I want to introduce you guys to our next panelist. We have Danielle Skelly, who is a professional in the field. I don't have your title listed, but I know that she's been a very supportive and a big ally in the community for some time, and she's a foster and adoptive parent to LGBTQ youth. So Danielle, take us away.
Hi everybody, happy Pride. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am a family support specialist with the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York. That's what I do professionally. In my other life, with my other hat, I am a foster adoptive parent with my husband for the last 15 years, taking in predominantly teenagers and mostly LGBTQ youth. So I'm here to give a perspective on how to be affirming. And my most proudest title at this panel is I get to be Rosie's mom. So that's the best part of this.
Gratitude. That's a big title right there. And that leads us to our last but definitely not least panelist, Ms. Rosie Williams, who is CASA-NYC Youth Leadership Council member, as well as a former foster youth herself. Tell us about yourself, Rosie.
So, hi guys, I'm Rosie Williams. I am with the YLC with CASA New York. My pronouns are anything respectful. I am pretty fluid. And my job there is to educate others to change their language with the foster care system, with the whole child welfare system. And that's my job.
Thank you, Rosie. Well, thank you everybody for your introductions. And we're going to jump right into questions, and we're going to start with some basic definitions. So the first question is for Rosie. Can you define LGBTQ+, which is the term that we're using these days, and the terminology changes so much. So one question is, what does the plus mean? For those who, probably most people know what LGBTQ stands for, but maybe you can remind us. What does the plus mean, and why does the terminology keep changing?
I think, like I said, I'm pretty fluid, and a lot of it with the plus is people that don't identify with just being lesbian or just being a gay male. They don't identify with any title. So that's why I believe that we put the plus on the LGBTQ to give light to other situations, other people living in these shoes, and people can understand that me being LGBTQ does not necessarily mean that I am a black, lesbian woman. I am a fluid. I love whoever I love. My gender identity and my sexual orientation is totally different. And I think people need to understand that everybody has their own definition of their title or their role or whatever they want to call themselves.
Thank you.
Gratitude. Thank you so much, Rosie. That was very informative. I want to tee off with our next question, which is a little more information from another expert that we have up here, and this one is for Bree. So Bree, can you share with our audience how do you define gender identity, i.e. what is the difference between gender identity and gender expression?
I feel like the gender identity is how you feel, how you see yourself as a person. Like, so say if one day I want to be called him, that's how I see myself. Address me as him, that's how I feel. Gender expression is how I might express myself. Like, people don't know that I'm a pansexual woman. So, like, for example, they might not know that I like men, women, anything that might float my boat that day, that's me expressing myself in that light. So I would say the difference is the way you look and carry yourself, and the other one is how you express yourself in that light. So yeah, that's how I see it. But yeah.
Gratitude. Again, very informative. And I want to pass this one off to my co-moderator.
Sure. So we're going to add, the next question is actually for both Rosie and Bree. We're front loading Rosie and Bree. How has being LGBTQ plus made the barriers that we know that all young people in foster care face even greater at times? Yeah, so that's the first part. It's a two-part question. That's the first part. So barriers for kids in care are tremendous. There are tremendous challenges. And does being LGBTQ make it even more challenging?
I'll let you go, bro. You said it. You spoke first. You breathed first, so you can go.
I believe it do bring a lot of challenges because I have to put on a face to show other people that I am not who you think I am, right? within the system, and that's just one phase. So being LGBTQ and not be able to be myself and express myself the way I want to, because I have to be this person so I can enter your home and stay in your home, it's difficult, because now I have to tell myself, is this right? Is this the way I really want to live my life? And those are the questions that go through my head, because I can't express myself the way I want to express myself. And some of my friends are the same way. I believe that me and Bree are only best friends because we have a lot in common of being LGBTQ, living in the system, going through these struggles, and we became best friends because of those commonalities. A lot of my other friends have to basically go to school one way, go in the bathroom and change their clothes, take off the wig, take off the makeup, and then go home because they are not accepted within a community or within a foster home or even within a agency. A lot of caseworkers, a lot of lawyers and judges don't respect you the way that you want to be respected because the way you look and the way you act. So I believe it brings a lot of challenges.
Thanks, Rose. You want to add to that, Bree?
Yeah, in my experience, it started even before I went into the foster care system. Like, one of the reasons I was shut out of my home was because I was expressing being gay. You know, my mom would do things like cut up my jeans to try to keep me from, you know, being that gender expression that I would want to, you know, express, you know, wearing my pants a certain way. I think about times where a woman would hear my name, you know, my name is really girly, they hear Brieanna, but when they see me, their whole persona changes because they see this. To them, I might look like a man, or this, you know, this different thing from what they were thinking of. I've been shunned out of foster homes because of that. The woman would kick me out of her apartment early in the morning just because she didn't want to be seen with me. She didn't even want to take me to church. I'm not a God-fearing person, but I am a spiritual person. You know, she wouldn't even ask me to go to church because she felt like, oh, you're gay. I'm not gonna take a lesbian to church with me. I'm not gonna be outcast by the church folks that I go to church with. And also, it was not being able to get a home. This is before they had the affirming rule. Everybody had to be affirming. I remember being one of the older kids, the hard to place kids, because of that barrier, that the fact that I was a gay, lesbian, Black woman. You know, so yeah, it's been many times. Me and Rosie been in the streets till 5 o'clock in the morning riding trains because we know that excuse my French, our gay Black asses can't go home after a certain time because we're going to be locked out, and that's the real tea. But yeah, to add to what you guys are saying, a lot of the kids are facing this experience. So yeah, I'm happy we're having this panel. I'm happy all of you guys are here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. All right, quick follow-up to that question. How can somebody who does not identify as LGBTQ get to know you or learn from you? And how would you like people to approach you if they, you know, for example, if you're a CASA volunteer and you might not know a lot of LGBTQ people, have a lot of people in your life, and you want to figure out what's the best way to support a young person who might identify as LGBTQ, how do they get to know you? How do they ask the questions they might have?
Is it for me or Rosie or the whole panel?
For both of you, for Rosie and Bree. Sorry, just follow up for Rosie and Bree, and then we'll move on to the other panelists.
I think the problem is a lot of people, they get nervous, or they get, like, I say nervous because when you don't know something about something that's different from your lifestyle, it's easy for you to judge it, right? Or people judge their experience by how they might have witnessed how other people who live my lifestyle, especially as a lesbian woman or someone who is under the umbrella of LGBTQ and the plus, right? People tend to get nervous about those situations instead of, you know, fully just not being judgmental and not going back in their minds about, okay, you might have experienced one LGBTQ person a certain way, but that doesn't mean this LGBTQ person is that same way. And I feel like a lot of times we get selfish. We forget that other people have experiences, other people have lives, and other people live in this society, you know? And I think it's just being willing to learn rather than judging or seeing me and thinking something totally different, because you never know. It's like the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. That book might be actually really good once you get to the second page, you know? So my thing, I guess I would say, get to the second page of your book. Don't just read the front and the back of the cover, read the whole book and then give me your opinion. You get what I'm saying? Even if it's not something I care about. You got to know me first before you judge me.
I think my answer is very simple. I'm a human being, right? My gayness does not determine how you should talk to me or treat me some type of way. I'm a human being, and that's all that you need to know about me. If you treat me in a professional way or if you want to be my friend, I don't think me being gay determines how you should act with me or towards me. The same way you talk to your brother, your sister, the same way you talk to your boss and your coworkers. I am that person. Don't believe that my gayness will portray on you, that because I'm a lesbian or I'm fluid, that I'm gonna like every girl that come into my contact, right? Or come in my face, or every man that come in my face. That's not true. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. They have judgment before they even come and speak to you. I'm a beautiful person. All you got to do is say hi.
I can attest to that. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you. Thank you guys. I just want to thank Rosie and Bree for sharing all of that information. Now this one is for the entire panel. So that's Danielle, Jarel, and Stephen included, as well as Rosie and Bree. So we have a lot of years of combined experience on this panel in 2 minutes each. Can everyone name one positive change that they've seen in the way that the system works with LGBTQ youth, and one thing they would like to see change in the way that the system works with LGBTQ youth? Brieanna hopped on camera, so I'm gonna lead off with Brieanna on this one. She said this one for me.
Can you repeat the question?
All right, so just to repeat everything, we have a lot of years here, right? Like as far as you having lived experience, Jarel having a career, and Stephen being a new guy at ACS. What is one thing positive change that you've seen the system make in dealing with LGBTQ youth, and what is one positive change you would like to see them make in dealing with LGBTQ youth?
I think one positive change for me was the affirming homes as far as this topic. What I would like to see change is making sure, like really making sure that people are affirming, because I feel like people want to be a foster parent so bad, or they go past their beliefs for something because they want it to happen. And I feel like 9 times out of the 10, like 4% of those people are probably not even affirming homes. They're just doing it because they want to get it over and done with, and they want to make sure that they want the certificate. So they're saying yes, when really it's like they don't, I guess, and a part of them doesn't think they're gonna, 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna get a kid that's like LGBTQ. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think it would be pretty dope if like LGBTQ youth advocates can spend a week with these people and really tell you about all of their triggers and like, I think that would be cool, even though we might not get to that place. But I think I want to see like real foster parents, real life people, like people who are actually in it for the kids. I think the system's mindset is so temporary. If we can get the system from being temporary, the mindset of the system from being temporary to long term, then I think we can be more effective with the kids that we serve.
Can I jump in? Thank you, Bree. I want to pass it to Stephen, because Bree, you talked about affirming homes. That was a positive change you've seen happen. And I'm going to ask Stephen, since he is the ACS representative, can you explain a little bit as part of, and then go on to your answer, but what does that mean? What is she talking about when she says affirming homes policy?
Affirming homes means that all foster care parents have been vetted and thoroughly screened by ACS to be affirming of all LGBTQIA+ youth. And if there's any circumstance where that foster parent or parents or home is found to be homophobic or transphobic or non-affirming or discriminatory in any way, ACS will remove the young person and maybe even not allow that foster parent to be in the system anymore as a foster parent. That's my understanding as the new guy, but I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
And we take that my office takes that so seriously.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity, from Stephen. Actually, I wanna pass so to go to the next panelist, I wanna ask the same question to Jarel. What is one positive change you've seen in your work, and what is one positive change you feel like we need?
So my change is actually, so what I'm gonna say is actually a positive and a negative. So it's the same answer. So under the non-discrimination policy that ACS created a few years ago, so what Brieanna had mentioned, that falls under the policy Affirming Homes. Under that, there's also a requirement that each foster care agency that's under ACS have an LGBTQ plus point person, which means that if a young person makes a complaint, let's say, example, I heard from Rosie and actually Bree about a home not being affirming, this person at the agency is supposed to, in theory, report it to ACS. Now, the reason that I said that's a positive, because on paper and according to the law, it's great, right? Every foster care agency have an LGBTQ plus person that's there ready to advocate and be a support and affirming. However, that person, the turnover at agencies are extremely, high. And the person really and truly, it's not really like they get adequate training, in my opinion, to take on that role of responsibility. So I like it in theory, but in practice, it needs some improvement.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jarel. I feel like that resonates. I see Stephen shaking his head over there. To go next, let's go with Danielle. We haven't heard Danielle's voice.
So I kind of agree with what everyone said, and I think it's a positive and a negative, and I'm gonna sort of mirror what Jarel says. I think that there have been a lot of really great policies towards the treatment of LGBTQ youth and, surrounding the idea of affirming homes and non-discrimination, but how that comes into practice is where I am concerned. I think that we really need to be thoughtful. Just because someone sat through a training on what it means to be affirming does not mean they're affirming. So I think when Stephen shared the idea of vetting people, that has to be in earnest. I think that vetting process needs to be in earnest. And look, it's a challenge. We have a shortage of good foster parents. We're always looking for foster parents. But I absolutely in no way think that a non-affirming home could ever be a good foster parent. So if they are not vetted well and completely and 100% affirming, then they can never be a good foster parent. So I think this is a critical piece of the training. So I'll say that having panels like this, having open discussions is the growth that I've seen as a positive. But now we need to take that policy and make it in practice in earnest. It needs to be real.
Thank
that's
you.
my answer.
Thank you. That was a great point. Rosie, you knew you was next. Go ahead.
So I like this question because what makes a home affirming? And I think Jarel and my mom did say something about it, but sitting in a classroom and
wait. We got a question like that for you. So
okay.
This one, or do we just want a positive change that you've seen and a positive change you would like to see? Now you can resonate with this answer, but I don't want you to go where you was going yet. We got that, that's coming.
Okay, so I'll skip that part. But what I want to see is a home like my mom. And I say that only because she didn't know anything about transitioning, being trans and everything. And she probably went crazy in her mind, but she didn't allow that to judge my little sister or me. She went out there and did her research, right? She went out there and learned from other people of how to basically raise a trans kid or even an LGBTQ kid. So I believe that's what a lot of homes should have. They should have that one person to support them in the questions that's hard, and the questions that they have popping up in their mind. And going to a classroom is not making you affirming. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. So that seems to resonate with you guys. This affirming homes, and we want to see better implementation across the board.
Stephen, you spoke, but it was sort of in response to something else, so you didn't actually get to say your policy. I don't know if it's anything different, but.
Thank you, thank you.
First, I just want to echo what everyone else has said, especially Bree and Rosie. We can't, like, systems are only as good as their implementation. And if the implementation sucks, then the policy is going to suck. And what systems need to figure out is how to really, in a meaningful, genuine way, implement these policies so that young people are safe. Until we do that, we've got so much work to do. You know, in the last 15 years, what I've seen as someone who's worked with LGBTQ systems involved young people is, I feel like in the mid 2000s, during like the Bush era, we had to go out and march on the streets and scream to City Hall that we need resources and beds and funding and foster homes for these young people. And that seems to have subsided. It seems like systems are trying to be designed to affirm LGBTQ plus young people. So that's good. But something that absolutely needs to be looked at is these young people aren't living in a vacuum or a silo. And these young people are coming to the system with intersectional issues. 9 times out of 10, a kid in the system is going to be Black or brown. So they've experienced structural racism. Most young people going into the system have experienced trauma. And so we really need to look at these young people in a holistic way. And so when we're writing policies, we have to really keep that in mind. And when we're implementing those policies, we have to make sure that the people who are helming them have a handle on how to affirm and look at a young person as a whole person, not just as a number or a stat.
Thank you. And you know what, Stephen, I'm going to jump ahead because you just brought up something, and this is a question we have for you later, but I'm going to jump ahead to this question. And it's about what oversight and standards are in place. So you talk about, we have great policies, but it's really the challenge. And I think this is absolutely true in my experience with the child welfare system and a lot of other systems. The challenge is in the implementation of the policy. So what kinds of oversight and standards do you have in place at ACS to ensure that agencies and foster parents are actually adhering to these policies, including, what we talked about, the requirement to provide affirming homes to LGBTQ youth, but really across the board? How do you at ACS make sure people are really implementing those policies in the way that they're intended?
Sure. And, this is a ever-changing system that can always be bettered. And that's why I'm here, to figure out how to do that, in all honesty. One thing that all youth theoretically are given upon entering care is a Know Your Rights pamphlet that says like what all of your rights are as a youth in care. If a young person identifies as LGBTQIA+, they're given specific gender affirming and sexual orientation affirming literature to help them potentially navigate through the system. Theoretically, every young person is supposed to be aware that if they are faced with any sort of discriminatory action because of their sexual identity, their gender expression, that they can make a formal complaint, and that will be channeled through the system of ACS. That complaint then goes to my office, and we've got a small but mighty team of people that work like hell to ensure that there's a thorough investigation. And that just isn't in foster care. That's in our child protection specialist division. That's in our prevention division. That's in our DYFJ division. So there is the point person system who kind of control the incident reports. And we try to be very thorough in those investigations. And something that's kind of more new that's coming to ACS is, as kind of like a new generation of staff are being brought in, is we're updating policies across the board to make sure that they're gender affirming, that they look at LGBTQ youth as a population in the system that needs to have specific and unique needs met.
Thank you. This is sort of I'm gonna ask you all the questions at once because you're kind of touching on things that we were planning to ask you. When you talk about specific needs that need to be met. Can you talk a little bit about some of the key research on LGBTQ youth in foster care? Sort of what are the relevant statistics? Why are there particular needs that need to be met? And what makes this population particularly vulnerable to both coming into foster care and to having more challenges when they when they age out of the system or when they exit foster care?
Sure. I mean, you know, us LGBTQ plus people are a protected class. You know, we are targets of hate crimes and discrimination still to this day. And because of such, we might be targeted within our systems. We oftentimes are targeted within those systems. Then we mix in the fact that a lot of our young people are Black and brown. We have to look at those intersectional issues, like I said. And oftentimes, you know, LGBTQ young people are coming in with some survival mechanisms that might be dangerous or self-harming. So we have to be really, really, really specific. Like this, you know, this is a population that we just like can't put a can on them and say this is how you fix it, because that's not at all the case. You know, currently we're going to publish a study in the next couple of months where we actually look to see how many LGBTQIA plus identified young people were in our care. And that number is staggering. The general thought across the board of the LGBTQIA plus young people in systems are about 25 to 40%. Well, I can't give too much information about this study because it's not public yet, and my boss would really, really be angry with me. We do fall, the LGBTQIA plus youth fall within that range. So there's a disproportionate number of these young people in our system. And that just can't be coincidence. There have to be corresponding factors. What I can tell you is that LGBTQ young people, I think as Bree said, heard the term hard to place more than their straight counterparts. And I think that can also kind of show you the structural homophobia and transphobia that can oftentimes be within these systems. We're hoping that like once this report is made national, we can begin to look at really remedying our current policy to make it as all-encompassing, comprehensive, robust, and current as possible. We are reviewing and rewriting our current LGBTQ youth and care policy. It's 8 years old now, so we're hoping to really make it a living, breathing document. And in rewriting it, we're going to come to people like you. I mean, what do I know? Like, I want to know, like, Jarel's experience. I want to know Rosie and Bree's experience. I want to know Danielle's experience as a foster parent. You know, we have to really look at our stakeholders and our advocates, not just the system, because they're the people who are living and breathing this every day. Mm-hmm. Theoretically, we're just governing it. And so, well, some of you expect to hear from me because I think there's a good wealth of knowledge here that I would really love to tap into.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Haas, you want to move on to the next question?
Okay. So my next question, and I guess this is for Stephen as well. Can you talk about any key research on LGBTQ youth in foster care, and what are any relevant statistics or what make them specifically vulnerable?
Sure. So I kind of touched on the New York City youth and foster care study, but LA also has LA did a very comprehensive stellar research study done by Westside University, which I'm happy to send the link to Kerry to disseminate for folks. What LA found is very, very much along the lines of what New York found, which was about a third of their young people in care identified as LGBTQIA+, and LGBTQI young people had a much harder experience in the system. And they had this population had higher levels of depression. The population felt like they had less control over their lives, and this population had also heard that similar term of hard to place. I recommend that reading. It gives you insight into what the system is.
It's an excellent study, and it's
level.
not hard to read. It's pretty comprehensive. It's pretty easy to read.
So we're happy to, thank you. We're happy to also send that out to folks who joined us today as a follow-up, in a follow-up email. So thank you.
Gratitude. Our next question is going to go to Jarel. As someone who advocates on a daily basis for LGBTQ youth in foster care, what are some of the most significant challenges you're seeing for youth both in and aging out of care?
Well, Brieanna and Rosie actually touched really on it, which one of the huge things, especially with regards to this population, is really having that affirming, caring, supportive adult. And what that looks like is a prime example. All of us tonight on the panel, we put pronouns that we go by. A lot of people don't even take the time out. They make assumptions, as I believe it was Brita had mentioned, made the assumption that I'm just, or Rosie, I'm sorry, I don't know which of the two said it, but made the assumption that I'm just a Black, gay, lesbian, and that's not the case. So a lot of my population, each and every day, the young people that I work with, they come in, they're frustrated, they're annoyed that people won't even take the time out to learn who they are, right? As basic as, how do you identify today? And it's an ongoing basis. They're young, their brain isn't fully developed, so it may change by the end of the week. So you have to ask that each and every time I meet with my young people. I ask them, okay, what should I call you today? Now, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I have to cross out the name that I thought I was gonna use and use a completely different one. So starting with something as, in my opinion, as simple as that, how do you identify? Because once you start that, you can then go on to help them with the really and truly challenging issues such as housing, such as education, employment, all of those things. But let's start at the very basic with, how do you identify?
Thank you, thank you. That was very informative.
Thanks,
That's
Jarel.
crazy.
The next question is for Danielle. Danielle, can you talk about what it's like parenting an LGBTQ plus youth? And what does it mean to provide a safe, affirming home for a young person who identifies as LGBT?
I guess for me, some of the challenge I've had with this whole panel, and not that I don't think it's wonderful, is that we are assuming that youth have identified as LGBTQIA. And I can tell you, when my 15-month-old came, I had no idea that I would be raising a girl, because she came not as a girl. And now she's 7, and I have a trans 7-year-old. So I think you have to understand that, exactly what Jarel said, we have to be sort of non-stereotypical, right? We have to allow youth to be who they are at any age. So I think it's amazing that we're talking about kids who I have already identified or come in as identifying as LGBTQIA. But what about just youth in general? They need to have the space to figure out how they identify, to figure out how they want to express themselves. And I think that is gender related, it's race related. How many of our kids are Black and brown that don't have an understanding of their race behind them? So I think being affirming from a gender standpoint is just giving them the space to be who they are, whoever that is, whatever that is, however they choose to express themselves. And I think what Jarel said, for me, is I ask a million questions. I ask every day, what's going on? How you feeling? And along with that, if I know that we're sort of on that gender spectrum, what am I calling you today? How are we dressing? Are we putting tutus on? Or are we putting, something more masculine on? It's every day. It's when youth come into your home, you don't assume you're gonna buy girl underwear or boxers. You ask, can we go shopping? Underclothes. I think it's just really being respectful of any youth that's in your home and the space of where they're at that moment. Make no assumptions. And I think it just has to be clear that that has to be across the spectrum. We can't just talk about teens. I think we need to talk about youth across the board and just giving them the space to be who they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. Rosie and Bree, can you guys follow up with talking about what does a safe and affirming environment look like, not just in a foster home, but also in a foster care agency or in the courtroom. I know we have some judges on who want to know, how do they make sure they're affirming and they provide an environment that feels healthy to you.
Told you, Rosie.
Yeah, so I think Jarel hit it on a point where start with the basics. Ask me my pronouns. Ask me how I'm feeling today. Who am I today? And things like that. And I think it is a big respect when it comes from an authority figure such as a judge, such as a caseworker, or a professional within the child welfare system that's respecting me enough to even ask me that question, where I can open up and now I can speak to you about my problems. Now I can tell you what's really going on in my life because you tore down a brick out of the big wall. You tore down that brick, right? So now you can squeeze through. And I think it's just that simple. It's respecting me as a human being and not looking at me like I'm a monster or like I'm such this unnormal, whatever image you have in your mind. Being an affirming home, like I said before, is just having a space to be who I am. And I can say what I want to say. Like, hey, Mom, can I be a girl today or can I be a boy tomorrow? And she's out there telling me, yeah, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I get you to the point where you are who you are and I love who you are and things like that. So just as professionals, I believe that once the adults start believing in the kids, that's when the kids start believing in themselves.
Thank you, Rosie. Bree, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I second motion what everybody is saying, and I would just say constantly showing up. Don't accept me today and not be able to accept me tomorrow because you might not like that. I want to be a male or I want to be a female. I would just say constantly show up and giving me unconditional love because people don't understand that the parents we live with or the people that take care of us in these situations are the people we look up to. Those are our role models. Those are the people that teach us how to live and be humans. So you just showing up and you loving me for who I am, that's teaching me how to, love myself, and give that same love to people that might need it, So I would just say that as well.
Thank you, Bree. So Haas, I think we have the next question, number 9 was already covered around affirming homes. So I'm gonna jump, why don't we jump on to question, Haas, I'm talking to Haas now, question 11, which are also for Rosie and Bree.
Thank you. So for Rosie and Bree, we have, we're gonna begin with Rosie on this one. As a youth in care, did anyone, or we could begin with Bree, whoever wants to jump in first. Rosie started the last one. As a youth in care, did anyone treat you different because you were LGBTQ? If so, how did you deal with the situation?
One of my first foster homes, like that was the lady that I told you guys, where she heard my name and she thought I was gonna be this pretty little girl, and when she seen me, I don't think I really dealt with it. I think I would just, a lot of times in care, in my situation, in my experience, has been having to be resilient, dealing with stuff that you can't change. So for example, when she would make me leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, I would be in the community because I didn't have anywhere to go. It's not like I had a Metro card or anywhere to go. I would find friends in that gated community that she lived in. And also I would just use my other resources, like going to different places where I would be accepted rather than taking it personal that she's not accepting me, Also, when I was judged, it was like I would teach people rather than taking it personal because people don't know you, so people don't understand why you're like this, or they don't know where you came from or what your background is, or what are some of the things that build you up to make you who you are. So I would just try to teach people, and then I would make a name for myself so that when you hear my name and you see my face and you see what's attached to this body, you have no choice but to accept me because now it's like, oh, I heard about Brieanna Hayes. She's the one that advocates. But when they see my face, it's like, oh, she's the lesbian woman that advocates, and makes a name for herself. So I just try to change people's mindsets. I try to teach them rather than getting mad with them and getting upset with them.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I,
you.
I agree with what Bree said. And I did have some similarities where one of the foster parents had a daycare in their home, and I had to leave early in the morning. She didn't want the little kids to ask if I was a boy or girl, so I had to kind of leave at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and school didn't start until 9. So I literally had to roam around the street. I had a lot of other incidents where just me popping up at their door, oh, I wasn't in for this. This is not what I signed up for. And I will have to sit in the agency and wait for another home or a respite or something in that realm. And how did I deal with it? At a young age, I didn't. I brushed it off my shoulders, or I cried in a corner, or I left it alone and kind of went outside and created my own family. And I think that's how me and Bree met in high school, because we just had similarities. Like I said before, I didn't get to the stage where I started loving myself until I started seeing other LGBTQ people and that was comfortable within their own body, like Jarel, like some of the people that's on basically in the audience right now, like Ronnie. Those were my people that I look up to because they so comfortable within themselves and they didn't care what people think. I was basically telling myself, why care? Why can't I be like that, right? And then I met my mom, and she also told me the same thing. Be yourself. Don't worry about what other people think. I love you, and that's all that matters. So basically, I just created my own support system, and that's how I became Rosie. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle, we wanted to just follow up with that. With a question about some more of the more specific challenges you see the young people in your home who are LGBTQ+, in terms of their interaction with the systems. What are the challenges that come up for them, and what are the challenges that come up for you when you're trying to support a child who identifies as LGBTQ+?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that not everyone understands it, right? So we had CPS called on us because we have a trans 6-year-old, and went through an entire CPS investigation based on the fact that someone didn't understand it and thought that there was something perverse or not right with that. Really being active in our LGBT community and network is really important to us. And I think sometimes having to really teach people, I think kind of what Bree said, right? Sometimes it's really easy to get angry and frustrated, and I absolutely get like that a lot, more than I should. But I think really taking the time to teach people basic things, not understanding the idea of gender identity and gender expression and the importance of pronouns, and just spending a lot of time educating people. And unfortunately, sometimes it's educating professionals, caseworkers who come into the house. It's people that my kids should look up to. They should be safe people. They should feel comfortable meeting with. And those people don't understand the importance of pronouns, don't understand the importance of being affirming. And that's where it gets frustrating, is the people that I should be relying on, I'm educating. And that's really hard. So just, you know, being patient with a system that should be teaching me, I shouldn't be teaching the system, is really hard. And just knowing that not everyone is going to understand. So I think, I mean, Rosie could say that we're not, but I think that we are a pretty quiet family. We stay to ourselves because sometimes it's just too hard to like be out in the community and get people's questions and answers and dealing with that. And, you know, it's just too hard. So we do a lot of things with the people that we feel safe with. So I think even though I am not LGBTQ identifying, I sort of have morphed into really closing my world into that world, because that's a safe space for my family as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. We're gonna jump into Q&A. We have a couple more prepared questions, but I think we'll save those for the end. And there was one, so people on the call in the audience, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box if you have questions. And there was one specific question that I want to highlight from Raymond Sweet, is asking, what did the social worker say about this? And he was referring to the story about having to leave your home early. And I'll say this is something, you know, several hours before school started because your foster parent wanted you out. And I'll say across the board, this is something we hear a lot of, you know, working with young people in care where they're locked out of the home because they're not allowed to be in the home when their foster parents aren't in the home. So this is a common thing. And the question is, what did the social worker say about that?
My social worker didn't say anything because I didn't tell her.
Right.
I wasn't comfortable with my caseworkers or my social workers to tell them anything. And why would I? Because what is the next home gonna look like? This is worse, but at least she's not beating me and starving me and things like that. I don't know what the next home is gonna look like. So I'm gonna try to keep it safe and cool, right? I'm gonna follow the rules. I'm gonna be like, okay, I'll leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. Do you want me back at 8 o'clock? I'm gonna be that perfect child because I've been in worse homes, right? And because I've been in foster care my whole life, so I've seen a lot of homes and institutions. And because this home was not abusing me or starving me, like I said before, I'm not gonna leave this home until she kicks me out. So my caseworker didn't say anything because wasn't comfortable enough to tell her.
Yeah, thank you.
The same thing for me. Like when that lady was kicking me out at 6 o'clock, that was my first ever foster home. Before I was in when I first got into foster care, I was in the diagnostic residential treatment center where you usually stay for 3 to 10 months and they diagnose what's the best placement for you. And she had been my first foster home. So for me, it was like, maybe this is how it goes. Maybe because she doesn't want me in her home, I had to leave at 6 o'clock. I just got to deal with it and figure out what I can do with that time. So I'm not alone and I'm not, feeling like homeless, Most of the time I would find myself doing things that, like I said, looking for a home, like family in the community and trying to figure that out. I never told my social worker, and when I did tell my social worker about things like this, I would be waiting for another home, and sometimes I wouldn't get that home. That's why I said the term hard to treat kid, because it was like you were the older kid, you were the kid who was like gay, who had like, what's the word, diagnoses, because you have behavioral problems and nobody wants to place you. So a lot of the times you don't say anything about those things because you don't want to be the kid waiting overnight for a home.
Yeah. Can I also add, I feel like a lot of parents been with the child welfare system for so long that they have a reputation with these agencies. And when you do tell your agency or your caseworker, they don't necessarily believe what you say because this model foster parent such a success that they're going to keep this home. And I think even on the professional side that they don't have a lot of foster homes. They don't have a lot of affirming homes. They don't have a lot of people that actually want to do this with passion. So they're going to keep what they have. And I think that's the problem.
Thank you. And that, I would echo that that's an experience we hear a lot about. I mean, that's not just Rosie and Bree who've had those experiences. I'm going to read a couple of questions from the chat. The one is from Hannah. How do foster children learn about the LGBTQ plus contact? So I think maybe this goes to Stephen, to report complaints to. For example, if a teen or preteen is learning about their identities while they're in care, how do they learn about the resources available if their foster homes are not really affirming?
Theoretically, they should learn from their caseworker, their social worker, someone at the overarching foster care agency. Those people should be informing the young people of their rights. There's also, if a young person wants to be advantageous, they can always go to our website and find the email, find the form, and submit something themselves or even call. But really, the foster care agency, the worker, should be informing the young person, and the foster parent should be aware of the system as well, and they should be doing the same.
So Stephen, not to put you on the spot too much, but I noticed you said a couple times theoretically. And I know it's like sort of back to that question of how do we implement policy? Do you feel like there's work to be done in terms of getting that information out to young people in a more systematic way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look what happened to Brieanna and Rosie. My heart broke listening to them just now. It was a systems failure, and the system needs to recognize that, and the system can't recognize it. Then what the hell are we doing here? That's just the reality of it. You know, we have to figure out a way for these young people for clearly to be affirmed and respected and loved, but also we need to figure out a way to make sure that they are aware of all of their rights and what they're entitled to within the system. And so, you know, there's an office of the advocate that young people can go to. Denise Nowinski is kind of a known fixture at ACS who investigates these incident reports. And so there are mechanisms, but they can absolutely be, you know, bettered.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, isn't there a fear from anyone who reports a home as not affirming that there might be retaliation? I guess about retaliation against, I guess, that young person or anybody else in the system.
Yeah. And I mean, with good right, a young person should have that fear, which is really also, once again, heartbreaking. But young people should also know that, you know, if they can reach out to the foster care agency, if they can get to the office of the advocate within ACS, or to my office, to Denise Nowinski, we could definitely put some protections in place for that young person. But that's the reality, you know. I'd be scared to say something, so we have to also recognize that's a reality. And so it's our job to figure out a way to make sure that these young people feel safe, to know that they can go to somebody. And that means that we have to be much better about disseminating this information and reinforcing this information to the young people.
Thank you. Jarel, at Lawyers for Children, I know as an advocate for young people, do you come across those situations where you feel like your clients are experiencing some kind of retaliation and you have to advocate for them?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, for my young people to feel comfortable and safe to even disclose what's going on, because as Rosie and Bree have shared, and I have heard this time and time again, a lot of them are willing to settle, you know, for what they're familiar with instead of the unknown. And I'm always challenging my young people, saying, I know it's one more traumatic experience, and I'm sorry that we even have to have this discussion, but it's unacceptable what's going on. So really grooming them and preparing them and supporting them to speak up, really and truly, it's a good portion of my job, and encouraging them to use the voice and not settle. Unfortunately, what the system is designed for them to do is settle and just be, you know, complacent.
Thank you, Jarel. There's another question from Haiti, and I'll give this to Danielle if you're comfortable with this. How much do foster parents receive for the care of a child?
Want me to answer it honestly? The more difficult the kid is, the more money you get. I mean, that's the truth. And the reality is that, you know, LGBTQ and trans kids are, as Bree said and Rosie said, they're considered hard to place, right? So you know that they're hard to place kids are more money. You know, I don't know how else to say it. But the reality is that if you do this the right way, if you are a foster parent doing it the right way, there's no way to make money at this. It's not enough money to care for a child appropriately. You know, not to put, but like, we talk about, like, especially if you're raising LGBTQ youth, I mean, some of the garments that they need and things like that are like way expensive. I have a 6-year-old that I spent like $100 in underwear so she could look cute in leggings. Are you kidding me? You know, so I think it's important to know that a lot, as Rosie said, a lot of foster parents who have been doing this a long time know how to work the system, but those are also foster parents who are sending kids out at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure there was no breakfast and no dinner, and they get free lunch at school. So yeah, if you're not feeding your kid all day, you might be able to get a little bit of money. I'm sure they weren't clothing them appropriately or meeting their needs in that way. And So, you know, I think there are people who are not well-intentioned, who know how to work the system, and probably prey to some degree on LGBTQI identifying youth because they know there's a need. They know there are not a lot of homes. And the truth is that if you are an LGBT home that'll take it to an LGBTQI identifying affirming home, and you will take a teenager, you will never have an empty bed. Because if one leaves, there's one to follow. There's not a phone, you will not be an hour without a phone call. So I think there are people who know how to work the system, and that's the sad part. And I think that speaks to training and vetting and making sure our kids feel safe to ask to have their needs met, know that they deserve more, that they, you know, they should expect more, and not because they're LGBTQ identifying, just because they're human beings. That's just a portion of who they are, and there should be an expectation that they should be treated absolutely, you know, almost better, because they need to heal from their trauma, and they cannot do that unless they're fully supported.
Thank you, Danielle.
So my mom did not get paid for me coming into her home. She gave me love and support. That was how she paid me, or got paid, basically.
Thank you. Because you were not her foster care.
Okay,
You were not
so
in
be
foster
clear,
care.
her agency was well aware of where she was, and they were more than, and I was a licensed foster home. It was just easier for them to put her on AWOL than to do the work to place her in my home. So
Right.
she spent over a year AWOL in my home, and her caseworker would check in. She was well aware of where she was, and I was licensed with an agency that contracted with New York City.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, another question. Lots of questions here. We've got about 15 minutes left. Is there training for social workers or caseworkers / testing done to make sure they are not homophobic? I'm laughing because I'm thinking it's actually a great question, but I'm thinking like a homophobic test would be good, would be valuable. Are kids able to report their social workers if they show signs of being homophobic? And how are kids protected from the people who are supposed to be helping them? So that's a lot. Who wants to take that? Stephen, you want to talk about training on, I mean, I think
Sure.
specific to this issue?
Sure. All foster care providers are mandated to take ACS sanctioned curriculum-based training on being a foster parent for LGBTQ young people. And as it stands, which we're going to change currently, a TGMB training as well. That really kind of looks at the needs of transgender and gender non-conforming, non-binary young people. You know, we're looking at changing some of the mandates because we don't think they're enough right now, and just given everything that's happening with COVID, we think that this is an opportunity for us to rework the curriculum and disseminate it more and better to foster parents. And so that's our goal for the next part of this year. But foster parents are to be trained. All foster care agency staff are also to be trained by ACS for working with LGBTQ and TGMB young people. And that mandate is supposed to happen anywhere from once a year to once every 2 years, depending on the training and the role of the staff person in the agency.
Okay, thank you. And Jarel, do you want to take the question? I know this is a huge question, and anybody else can feel free to jump in, but how are kids protected from the people that are supposed to be helping them?
Well, that's the sad reality, right? So yes, there is the Foster Care Bill of Rights. It goes back to there's policy, there's the non-discrimination. So there's all of these lovely policies But once again, the way that it's executed, first off, a lot of these young people, to be very transparent, they don't even know that this is in existence. So there's a lack of knowledge sharing. So you have all of these lovely memos and documents, but how is it trickled down to the young people? How is it trickled down to the direct care staff that's working with these young people? So there's so many disconnects, because usually in my experience, it's the higher ups that know all of this information. But when you go down to the line staff, and especially the young people, they don't know any of this. A lot of times I'm one of the first people sharing them. Hey, you have a right. Don't you understand that there's an LGBT point person? And this is the person at your agency. And I'm doing the introduction. So I'm like, wait, you've been at this agency for a number of years. How am I, person that's not affiliated with your agency, telling you about at your own agency, you know? So there's just a lack of transparency, information sharing, and of course, policies needs to be updated and changed. But even what's in place is not trickling down.
And I also think there's a fear of retaliation. I think as a foster parent, when you notify your kid when they move in that they have a right, and something happens in your home that you know is against policy, and I'm in a slippery situation because I'm a professional and a foster parent, so I am well aware of what the policy is and the intended nature of the policy. So when kids are informed, then they want to know who informed you. How did you find out about that? And then there can be repercussions against the adults potentially, and against the youth, because you could be very happy in a home and asked to get moved because you question a home you used to be in, or you question a worker that you're working with, or you question someone that you interact with the agency. And they threaten moving kids all the time. Oh, you're not happy there? We'll move you. Oh, we'll do this. Kids would rather deal with bullshit, excuse my language, and being treated horrifically than to move. So adults, outside agency staff, and I think even inside agency staff, I think sometimes line workers are afraid to empower their youth to know their rights, because it's not reflected upon well up the agency. I think agency directors and ADs don't like to have those meetings. They don't want to do that work. So kids who rock the boat, workers who rock the boat get moved. They get repercussions that can be justified. Let's be clear. Bree and Rosie, they sound lovely, they're wonderful kids, but they were bad. And they did things that people could say were difficult to live with, right? So anybody could make a reason why they needed to end up in a residential, why they needed to be in a group home. And it really could have just been their way that they were advocating for themselves. So I think we need to be really aware of, there's a system, you know, talk about systemic racism, there's like some systemic oppression for kids who know their rights. There's really oppression. You talk about intersection on so many levels. There's systemic problems that prevent youth and good staff from doing the good work.
Right, and I definitely second that motion, because even when me and Rosie were working for You Gotta Believe, and we were teaching potential foster and adopted parents how to become these kind of the perfect parent for these kids, a lot of the things that we would deal with is that when they get to the agency, after they finish their training, the agency would change that mindset, that forever mindset, or that long-term mindset that we would install on these people, and make it so temporary. So now these people are looking at it like, oh, well, we don't know. Well, this kid is going to be here. This kid is here. We don't know if they're going to be here for a while. So, hey, let's keep that mindset like, oh, they're going to keep moving. But really it should be, we don't know if this kid's got stopped, and we're going to support this kid until the kid goes. You know, so a lot of it was changing teaching that old dog new tricks. And half of the time the old dog doesn't want to learn new tricks because they don't feel it's necessary, or they're like Jarel said, they don't want to do the work. You know, so.
Thank you, Bree and Danielle. Couple more sort of technical questions. Does New York allow same-sex couples to foster and or adopt children? And is there an effort to match them with LGBTQ plus children? Who wants to take that? Stephen?
Sure. It's something that we've been talking about for the whopping 5 months I've had the job. So in New York, LGBTQ foster parents LGBTQ people can become foster parents. It's within our right. But just because someone identifies as LGBTQ doesn't necessarily mean they'll be good foster parents or a better foster parent to an LGBTQ young person. That's just real. I can imagine maybe some cisgender gay people not knowing how to deal with a gender queer or non-binary kid. And so really the goal is to match the best kid to the best parent. There have been, in the past, there have been campaigns to recruit LGBTQ plus foster parents. Something that we're gonna try to do is recruit foster parents specific for LGBTQ young people, so that we don't have to get like this pool of people is affirming. So cross your fingers that can happen in the next few months.
So we're pretty active in our LGBTQ center, and ironically, I have seen that sometimes LGBTQIA couples and adults don't want to raise LGBTQIA youth for lots of different reasons. It brings up their own trauma, their own stuff, and it has its own challenges. So I love that Stephen said, we're looking for parents to support LGBTQ youth. Whatever those parents look like, we already know they're affirming because they're coming forward for a specific population. I think that mindset is so much better because, there might be amazing LGBTQIA parents for LGBTQIA youth, but you can't make an assumption that that be true. Just like you can't make an assumption that only Black people can raise Black children, only white people should raise white children. I think everybody has to be really vetted and strength-based that they're going to do the best job for that child.
Thank you. That's a great point, Danielle. We are about, I think I've gotten through most of the questions in the chat. I'm going to hand it back to Haas because we had a couple more questions that we wanted to end with for the whole panel. So I think that'll take the next 9 minutes. But if we have more questions, we'll try to squeeze them in at the end.
All right. So the first one I want to ask is, if you could create an ideal system for LGBTQ youth in foster care, what would it look like and what would it take to get there? I want to lead off with Jarel for this one.
Well, I think honestly and truly with me, and it's something that I've been talking about a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff, let's make it a human race. Let's make it one race, because at the end of the day, to put things in category and separate things, I really feel that's a lot of times where the lack of understanding and acceptance come in, because you're like, well, I don't identify as LGBTQ+. I don't want to touch that. That's not my population. I'm not, in my case, I'm not white. So it's like, well, now I don't want to be around white people. So it's like, why can't we all start with the basic, we're one race? Taking that, in my opinion, if we can create a system where we're coming together, collaborating, even like today's panel, it was very refreshing to hear from Rosie and Bree. I look at them as my sisters and brothers because, I grew up in the child welfare system as well. So seeing them, their growth, it's refreshing for me. So if we can have a safe place where we can come together and collaborate as one race, I think we can start fixing all of this craziness that's in the world.
Gratitude. Next, I want to ask Danielle, what does your perfect system look like?
So I'm going to sort of piggyback off what Jarel said, because I think to design a system for LGBTQIA youth, you have to design a system for youth. Because when an infant comes into care, just because they have a penis or a vagina, does not mean that that is how they're going to live their lives, that is the gender identity that's going to be between their ears. So I think we need to create a system where we don't fall into gender norms, where we really don't assume pink is for girls and blue is for boys. We buy trucks, we buy dolls. I think we need to create a system that sees children and supports them in the best way that they can, and sees youth and supports them in the best way that they can. So, I mean, we could talk about systemic change all day long, but I think the root of the issue has to be that we can design a system for LGBTQ youth, for Black youth, for brown youth. We have to design a system for youth that's going to meet all of their needs. And from a gender standpoint, from a sexual identity standpoint, we have to just really accept the child that's in front of us, not make assumptions, and know that that's where the adults have to come from. So making sure the adults that are involved in the system understand that we're dealing with children, and that just because they have a penis or a vagina does not mean they're male or female. And we need to really be aware of that, because I had to learn that in 3.3 seconds. And
Gratitude.
it has been a learning curve every day.
Gratitude, gratitude. That being said, I want to lead off with, let's go, Rosie.
I would just tear down the whole system and build a new one. I don't believe that trauma is implemented in the system enough. Trauma-informed therapy, trauma-informed caseworkers, judges, lawyers, whoever deal with the youth need to be trauma-informed. No matter if you LGBTQ, straight, Black, white, no matter what. You need to know how the brain is developed with the trauma, without the trauma, or whatever that kid is going through in life. And that a lot of the trauma starts way before we even enter the system. And then it just builds up even more. And I do agree with my mom and Jarel, where we are one race, and you cannot create a system just for one group. You need to create a system for every youth in the system that's coming through the system. That's why I say I'll build it. I'll tear it down and build it back up, because it's too old. And the rules and the laws that apply with the child welfare system does not apply with society today.
Thank you. And on that note, I'm going to have Bree expand on that for us.
For me, you always say the term, it takes a village to raise a child. I feel like for me, it looks like Rosie smiling from ear to ear because she has a mom that supports and loves her 100%. It looks like adults like who identify as LGBTQ, who are like Jarel, who know that I'm not supposed to be there, but my friend brought me there because I need the resources, and you still fed me, and you still gave me the resources, and you still accepted me. It looks like that. It looks like people like Kerry and Elizabeth fighting every day to make change in the system, you know? And it also looks like people like Steve, who's trying to work in the system and trying to make change, even though he just got here. And there's so much on his desk, but he's still trying to do it, you know? And it also looks like kids like me, Haas, and Rosie trying to make change in ourselves and show these other kids that they have people that are like them, that they're not by themselves. Like, they can do it too. They can succeed. And even if they don't feel like they can succeed, they have people that are willing to sit there with them and push them to succeed. So I think it just looks like all of us working, doing the work that we do, and constantly showing up and constantly loving and being unconditional to those people and not being judgmental, being willing to learn, being willing to implement ourselves in things without feeling like, because this person said this and this person said that. No, it's what you said, and it's how you react and how you make change and how you implement it. So that's what the system looks like for me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Those are all really dope, and we're gonna finish up with the guy who's working in the system himself at ACS and hoping to bring major change. From the sound of it, let's go, Stephen. What does your perfect system look like? And I want to challenge you. Let's wipe your office out of this answer. Like, let's wipe your title, let's wipe your office. Just what you know about ACS, what you know about systems, approaching this as if you were a new professional, and you get to walk into ACS and they're like, yo, rewrite out everything. What would you do?
Wow. Can you tell that to my boss tomorrow?
I think this the council that kind of wants to run that whole thing right there. But
I've taken
we'll
all of your names.
We'll start with your small division.
Sure.
No
I've taken all of your names. You're going to be helping out. You just don't know it yet, everybody. I mean, to follow Bree and Rosie, just their brilliance and the beauty of their soul, it's not an easy thing to do. I just want to commend them both. They're phenomenal people who I've met literally an hour and a half ago, but I'm kind of falling in love with already. I want to just give you so much props for being you. So if I was coming in as a newbie, as like a 22-year-old social worker, I would say, number one, I would say we need to listen to the youth in the systems first and foremost. Adults cannot be at the forefront of doing this mind Olympic. We need to really listen to these young people because they're experiencing it. We just can't try to facilitate it, think about what they're going through. We need to really actually listen and allow their voices to be heard and their voices to have power in the system. Adultism needs to go, as far as I'm concerned. And then if we look at equity, equity really means giving everyone they need, giving everyone what they specifically need to be equal at the end of the day. And so I would create a system where we are giving every youth what they need, so when they get out of care, whenever that may be, that they have the tools to lead a happy, productive life. So yeah, we gotta look at equity, we gotta look at the young people.
Thank you. So that's how you would build your system?
That'd be the start.
I wanna add a word to your happy. You said happy, and then you said another word after that. Happy.
Healthy, I don't remember.
Yeah, happy, healthy, and sustainable.
Ooh, good one.
Because we could be happy, we could be healthy. But is it momentary, or can we do this on our own moving forward?
Can I steal him from you, Kerry?
Nope, he just got here, sorry. But he's happy to work with you. So I want to just thank, it's 7:31. We are out of time. I know there were a couple of questions that we didn't get to on the chat. It's really hard to read. This is, all the questions in the chat. But I want to thank all our panelists so much. This has been amazing. We've learned so much, and I want to thank all of our participants. We are thrilled to have such a great turnout. And this is the beginning of a conversation. I hope we can have many more of these conversations. And we are definitely going to follow up with all of our panelists. We will also send an email following up with all of everybody who joined us tonight with some of the resources that we mentioned, and opportunities to kind of ask any other questions that people have that we weren't able to get to. Happy to connect people if necessary. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night, and we look forward to the next steps.
Health, wealth, and prosperity.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. I'm so honored.
Thank you for being here and being a part of our panel.
Yeah,
Jarel,
I'm grateful, you guys.
Danielle. Thank you, Danielle.
I always got you. You know that, Bree.
And Bree
Yeah.
and Rosie, thank you guys for sharing